Good evening, and welcome to the special meeting of the Speedway Redevelopment Commission. Today is October 8th, 2018, and I would like to call our meeting to order. I do want to make some introductions that will establish that we, in fact, have a quorum. On my immediate right is Gordon Rundle, who is the Vice President of the Commission. Immediately to my left is Brody Duncan, who is a Commission member, and to his left is Rhonda Schwartz, who is the Secretary of the Commission. And then sitting adjacent to Rhonda is Dr. Terry Reed. He's the representative from the Speedway School Corporation. On my very far right is Tim Gropp, who is our Economic Development Director for the town of Speedway. And all the way down here on the left-hand side is Mr. Bob Clutter, who is counsel to the town of Speedway and the Redevelopment Commission. So we have established that we do have a quorum to conduct business. So the first item of business that we will attend to is the previous meeting minutes of our regular session of September 24th, 2018. The minutes had previously been distributed, and comments were solicited by staff. And unless there are any other edits, suggested changes, we will accept those by consent. Then we also have the next item is our public comment, and if any of the members of the audience, the general public who are in attendance this evening would like to make a comment, please step up to the lectern. Well, not so fast.
Seems to be a mad rush.
Just take it easy, one by one. So everybody's declined to make a public comment. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is our new business, and that is the approval of the Economic Development Agreement for 2500 North High School Road. And this is a project that we have been working on. We had also secured services to determine what the total cost for the overall development in preparation of that site and ready for marketing, development, and construction. And what I'd like to do is ask Tim Gropp to give us a good overview of the contents of the agreement and the draft that has been presented to everyone.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Just a few points before we jump into the Economic Development Agreement. As you mentioned, we've been working on this project for quite a while now, and actually several years if you go back. So we're excited to be moving this forward after all our public input and getting feedback from both the general public, the SRC, the town council. We feel like we've gotten a buy-in to a vision of that area and a lot of momentum going right now. So having worked with partnership of Hegman Development Group and Rebar Development, who will be called let me get it right, HG Rebar Speedway 2500 LLC. Nice short name. Appreciate that. From this point on, now referred to as developer. The developer. We feel like we're in a good spot to move forward. We did move this along quicker than maybe anticipated because we do have a few leads out there that are requiring us to make some decisions on the site. So we need to get the developer and this partnership moving as soon as possible. We want to make sure we do everything properly and we vet everything out, but we do, it's time to get moving, and we want to make sure we don't miss any opportunities by sitting here dragging on everything that's happening. So,
excuse me, Tim, before you go any further, can you, for the audience's benefit, can you describe the citizen feedback and the commentary that we solicited leading up to this point?
Yeah, so our initial step was actually we hired Rebar and a team led by Rebar Development to do some due diligence for us. We needed to wrap our head around what the potential costs were out there and what that site could be and what are some of the needs of the community. We had a public forum, which provided a lot of input. We've had that on our website. We've had a lot of walk-ins and calls as well. We presented to the town council and the SRC as well, and then took all that feedback and then kind of tweaked what the original concepts were to something that would reflect the town's wishes. again, that's just a concept at this time. It can still be tweaked, and you never know what walks through the door tomorrow that we might want to pursue, which is what we want to make sure we're ready for. So we've documented all the public feedback. We've kind of lumped them into similar categories and taken a lot of that feedback to kind of come to where we're at today as far as the concept for the site. And should introduce Shelby Bowen from Rebar Development is here to answer questions on the developer side as well. So does that answer what you're
Yeah, I
looking
think
for?
that was an important element to reiterate, is that we did solicit comments from the community, and we had a fairly good turnout at the Speedway Public Library. And additional comments, suggestions continue to filter in, and staff had collected those. And with that data, with that information, it helps the developer understand how that site needs to be developed, what the community needs, and trying to fulfill those to the best that is possible. So thank you, Tim.
So out of all that, we have a piece of land that needs a lot of work, and we do not have the capacity or the connection necessarily to be the developer for that. You need people that specialize in that and dedicate their time to that. What we're good at in local is infrastructure. So we've put out an agreement here that allows us to sell our property. In essence, this is truly, when you break it down, it's a land sale agreement with a few other caveats to it, if you will. So to make sure that we're getting the development for the town that we want to see out there. So the EDA outlines the general agreement terms. Part of the EDA outlines the additional agreements that will need to take place over the next 6 months of due diligence. This really starts a due diligence time, but allows the developer to really dive in and start negotiating on behalf of this property, start putting deal structures together, talking to some of the existing businesses out there, how they want to incorporate into the overall development, if they want to incorporate the overall development, and really allows them to start moving forward to tie this in and see what's real out there. They aren't going to spend a lot of time to this point if they're just going to be walking away. This kind of ties them in and says this is real and we need to get moving. So it'll also allow us to trigger spending a little bit more real money to start drilling down on infrastructure costs and site development. So we know we're going to have to push a lot of dirt out there. We know we're going to have to add water and sewer lines, new roads put in. We have a good estimate of what that's going to cost. This will allow us to start truly engineering that and zeroing in on those costs. What we've tried to do in the EDA is cap that amount as much as possible. We know there's still some work to be done there, but we think we have a good ballpark. So basic outline, the agreements that are going to come over the next I think it's 6 months that was requested. I think I have it in here. One change I need to make, I think I have 120 days, and you had requested 180. So we will make that change. That is one change we'll need to make. Will be the actual purchase agreement for the site. The covenants and restrictions, that's a real key one. Whether we go with a PUD or covenants and restrictions, that's what will actually be recorded on the site, that allows us to have additional design standards out there, which will limit certain uses if we so choose. It really gives the teeth to the project to make sure that we're getting the development from the Redevelopment Commission and town side that we want to see out there, while giving them flexibility on being able to go out and attract tenants as well. So that'll be the document that kind of dictates some of the costs for development as well. Also, updated infrastructure costs and layouts, and any kind of templates or leases and everything, so we know how this all get put together. So this kind of outlines that. A couple things we did add in, just to be clear. Part of the agreement that they're looking for is that they're going to go ahead and we will sell the land for approximately $3 million, but $500,000 of that will go towards early site development costs. That will count against that $3 million, but it'll also count towards our $5 million as well. If by chance at the end of those 6 months that we do not come to an agreement, or they decide it's just not the right project for them, we will own all that work, but they will also be reimbursed, whether we choose to reimburse or put a mortgage against the land, they'll be able to get that money back as well. So it's really them financing the first portion of this up front. And I think you called it development costs. So that language was inserted, and then also we added a little more specific of what the documents will be that we need to still draft as we move forward. And we will also added some on the financing the infrastructure, because we're not sure over the next 6 months. We know we'll have land sale dollars, but we'll also either, we're applying for an EDA grant, or we might have to take out a TIF. So we've looked at some preliminary, just rough TIF numbers to make sure we can generate enough dollars and what assessed value that would take to generate what we need. So we've added language in section 4.03 that allows us to put a minimum assessed value on the site project, and we haven't zeroed in on that number yet. I have some preliminary numbers. We've left it blank in this one, but we will put a minimum assessed value similar to what we did on the other side of the interstate, or of Crawfordsville Road as well. There was a $21 million minimum assessed value on that side to make sure it covered the bonds. We'll have that number here as well. So, because we haven't had that, I just got those numbers earlier today and haven't had that discussion yet with the developer. We've left that to be inserted here over the next couple days. So that is the basic changes that we added. Bob, was there anything else that was changed from original draft?
No, I think you hit all the highlights. That was
It was the 500,000.
yeah, a few minor
TIF.
details here and there, and but that was certainly.
Mr. Bowen, would you like to add anything from your perspective? I don't think I've ever called you Mr. Bowen.
Thanks, Tim, Mr. President, members of the commission and staff.
Well, he's never referred to me as Mr. President, so.
I think that was a good summary. I want to emphasize that this is really a partnership. It's not as much kind of a traditional land sale. We're going to be working very closely with the Redevelopment Commission in the town as this progresses. And our hopes are that it gives us your stewardship to allow us to get started and start, design and have site control and a due diligence period. It's our hope that we can go out and start to get development deals and development partnerships, to Tim's point about a minimum AV, that'll kind of clear up the financing of the infrastructure prior to our 6-month due diligence period, which I think we're all going to kind of be working together to collaborate the best way to help finance that infrastructure along with the purchase price. But really excited, appreciate your stewardship. We're getting calls like you are. People are hearing that maybe we're going to be working on this, and I think we've got a really good team for that, and just really.
Could you maybe explain, 6 months is a pretty long due diligence
Yeah.
period. Why is it so long?
Yeah, and really, it's kind of, in our opinion, I think it says no later than 6 months. I think it behooves all of us, if we get to a point where we think we're ready to close, we're prepared to do that. We have the wherewithal to execute prior to the due diligence period, but there are a few things I think we all want to make sure. The traffic signal is critical to the rest of the development, and the end users are going to care about that. We're working on how to best utilize relationship with Circle K, who has a gas station, 2 gas stations on the site, El Rodeo. The cell tower folks have some residual land that we'd like to acquire, and so there are a lot of kind of moving parts that are going to hopefully materialize over the next 6 months or sooner. And once we kind of all, meaning you all and our team, feel like we're in a good place to close, if it happens sooner, which I think it's possible, then we'll just close and kind of just keep on moving.
You brought up a good point on the intersection, 25th and High School. You probably see that language in there quite a bit. We actually will be more of a partnership with the town. The SRC can't really do the intersection, so we'll be the funding mechanism for that. But it'll be a partnership with Indianapolis, DPW, and the town. And what we'll do is, as we start narrowing in on what the users will be, we'll have to update that study And also depend a little bit on funding. Right now, it's not feasible to even look at the roundabout there because it's about $2 million more than intersection improvements. But if by chance we get the full EDA grant and we have a little money to play with, we might want to look at, based on traffic counts, if that makes more sense or not.
Yeah, and one other thing I think is important to this development that we've talked about is through the either declarations or PUD and our partnership with where we arrived at a purchase price, a lot of that is really what's kind of built into that is this is going to be a higher quality of development, I guess you could say, higher standards than maybe what would be considered the minimum. And I think that your all partnership and the purchase price and the investment that you're making in infrastructure has allowed us to propose maybe a higher quality development than if we were just going to kind of go the straight minimum standard commercial, highest and best value. And so I think we've reached a good partnership to create something a little, not that there's lower quality, but I think it's hard for a developer if they're really trying to just maximize their investment to do maybe some of the, green space or trail or any of these things that maybe you wouldn't typically see. I believe that we'll see in this master development, including maybe architectural standards that are in excess of what the minimum is, landscaping standards we've talked about, and creating some consistency so it looks like a thoughtful master development, because that's our collective intention. And so I think that's kind of a critical differentiator to this partnership as well.
Great. Does anybody have any questions of?
I have a question on the
Mr.
cell
Bowen?
tower. Under this agreement, does the developer assume the financial responsibility if that needs to be moved?
Yeah, because ultimately what we think it's going to be difficult, first of all. And then second of all, so with the assumption that it's not going to be moved, we would only do it if it essentially had the same value to the land that became available if we move it. We've talked about it being $1 million, so if it were to create $1 million in additional value, it would make sense. If not, we'll just sit back down with you all. But the research we've done shows that could be difficult, mostly due to some of the equipment, not necessarily just the tower itself, but some of the various carriers that have their specialized equipment that's on site now.
And I think if it doesn't move, there's ways you can dress it up, make it kind of blend into
Yeah.
the development a little better. And as Shelby mentioned, there's residual land there that would be nice to add on to the development. So.
Yeah, our architectural partner did a study on maybe the best way if it's going to stay. And ultimately, through their research, has shown that if we create maybe some architecturally significant buildings, some nice entrances to the development, some wayfinding signage, that ultimately that draws your eye more so than if you tried to potentially do something with the tower itself.
Good. Any additional questions? Mr. Bowen? Thank you very much, Mr. Bowen.
I have one.
Oh, wait a
Sorry.
minute. We have one more
I'm
question.
not sure if it's really to you or to Tim, but if we could go into the minimum assessed value, like how that number is going to be defined, and then follow up, what if
Yeah.
it doesn't get met?
So how we've kind of looked at that is, we know we have the sale price dollars, and then we know there's a gap from the infrastructure cost needs. So we need to make sure whatever is developed on this side, if we reset the TIF there, if we have to go the TIF route, that it will generate that much of construction proceeds, which means it has to, taking out TIF bond, a lot of it's eaten up in cost of issuance and reserves and everything else. So we had our London Witty group that does our financial analysis back into that number with some fluff. We didn't want it to be really tight. We wanted it to have some, so that's where we kind of have to keep narrowing that down a little bit. I know they've done some assessed value numbers on their projections, but we need to make sure that whatever that, it's almost a developer guarantee in a way, where we have to, almost. Attorneys disagreeing, so.
Well,
Well, it reads that.
But we need to make sure that we can cover what we're committing to.
Okay.
And that's what that number needs to be.
To make the TIF work, to make the infrastructure work.
right.
For whatever the gap is. And if we want to take out a little more TIF because we need to keep some of the sale price for operating, then we need to factor that in as well. So that's how we'll get to that finalized number, so.
And that'll come into focus in the due diligence period, correct?
Yeah, well, before we sign the EDA, like I said, I just got it this morning, so we haven't had a chance to sit down, and I have a call into them to kind of clarify a few of their numbers, and as soon as we get that, we'll insert it before we finalize the ADA here, and make sure that the developer doesn't disagree as well.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, a lot of it really will evolve over the due diligence period as we have end users and we know, ultimately maybe we can start assuming, because we're all motivated to make sure there's a repayment source for the infrastructure. So I think, we'll work closely with you all as we hopefully, we're going to start immediately meeting with potential end users. So it's our hope that we, have some of that in place maybe prior to the end of the due diligence period.
And we have to operate as though we're not getting any kind of grant money. So if we
Yes.
do, it's fantastic.
Yep.
But if not,
Yep.
how are we paying for these
Yeah.
infrastructure improvements? And we
100%.
got to make sure we aren't squeaking by, that we're actually covering it and have a little bit of excess, so maybe we can pass through some to the schools or find other projects in the area that make sense to help out, so.
And
So
I
the
think
assessed valuation will come in during the due diligence, like based on that, or is it after?
We should have that done by the end of the week, hopefully. We'll have that
Oh, okay.
number tied
At
in.
least in terms of what the number is.
Know what the number is, but the
What we'll
actual
need.
assessment,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, they'll be
once they
penciling.
Yeah, the
determine what the
actual
users
assessment,
or
are.
the actual
yeah.
assessed.
Correct. A, for instance, is across the road where Speedway Marketplace is. They had a minimum assessed value of 21 million that they were required to get in
Sure.
that development. And that would cover the bond payments.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps also with the additional ratio on those bonds.
Mhm.
You always have to have a percentage
have
above
to-
what those actual bond payments are, so that we have that cushion.
Yeah. You
Any
need to have-
development we've done, it's always been based on that ratio.
Yes, you need to have good coverage, and that makes them certainly more marketable, too.
Correct.
And just based on acreage wise, which is not always the best way to do that, if it was $21 million on the other side, it'll probably be 25 to 27 million on our side, somewhere in there. So we just got to make sure we're able to actually get that number if we develop, so.
Yeah, and it'll help that through the purchase price, presumably, a good portion of the first infrastructure cost is cash that you'll know that you've got, and then you're really talking about a delta, which hopefully will become clearer when we understand AV and use.
Good question, Gordon. Any further questions? Well, thank you again, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you.
All right, well, the next item that we need to proceed on is, a resolution has been prepared by council, which essentially authorizes the commission to proceed and staff to proceed with the following negotiations of the Economic Development Agreement. So we have in our packet that was distributed at the beginning of the meeting, Resolution 2018-06 of the Speedway Redevelopment Commission, and it is a resolution approving an economic development agreement on the 2500 project and authorizing execution by the president of the commission. So do I have a motion to accept such resolution?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept Resolution 2018-06.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So is there any further discussion on the resolution? Any questions? Well, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of accepting Resolution 2018-06 of the Speedway Redevelopment Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. And unless there is any other business or comments that the commission members would like to make, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second
I
that.
think we all will concur. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.